Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome back. Today we're about to begin a new adventure. We're going to start a new unit on a very new subject, and that is talking about case and case endings. Now there's a lot to talk about with this, so today we just want to get the basics of how does this basic system function. Now, it's important that you understand that because everything we're going to talk about after this will depend on you understanding these basics. So if you don't understand what we talk about today, what follows in the next lessons is not going to make much sense. So our goals today are just to be able to recognize case endings when we hear them or when we see them and understand why they are there. And we want to specifically focus today on one particular ending, and that is this one here, and you know that is pronounced N. So look out for that when it pops up, and you will see why as we go on. Now let's begin with a little perspective. Now we don't want to tell you that everything is really important, because then nothing becomes important. And we've been drilling you these past couple of weeks on how important the measures are and roots and how you really have to understand these. So I want to start now by saying that case and case endings are definitely nowhere near as important as the measures. In fact, for certain things, these aren't really important at all. But as we go on, you're going to see why they pop up in some circumstances, and it's important to know them. The other thing that's important here is that people have very different perspectives on case endings. Case endings are basically a leftover from the very formal type of Arabic. If you read the Quran, if you read classical poetry, they depend on case endings for their sound. And so Arabs who love the language are very passionate about these. In fact, if you happen to study in an actual Arab school, not a study abroad program that's designed for Americans, but if you actually go to study Arabic in a real school in Egypt, this is all they talk about, and they think it's critically important. And so that's depending on who you study with, they will place various degrees of importance to this. In fact, in some programs, you go to apply for the program, and the placement exam consists of putting case endings on the words. Now, I don't find that to be very useful, but you can be asked to do that. So it's important to have some understanding of this, and we're not going to go crazy. And so what we will try to do here, to be fair, and throughout this, I'm going to let you know the situations where you really need to know this stuff, because it will appear in actual Arabic, and I'll tell you the stuff that won't. Now, in terms of the tests, you are going to have to know these basics, but we'll make it very clear what you need to understand. So I think that is pretty fair. Okay, but just be aware of this. And different professors have different opinions on this. When I went to grad school, we had an Arabic literature class, and that's all we did is we sat around and we read aloud from books, and our professor wanted us to read with all the case endings. So I figured, okay, I went ahead and wrote them all in my book, and he said, oh, no, you don't do that. I want you to do them from memory. So we had to know where to put these things in. I don't find that's very useful. Most of these formal case endings, if you use them on the street, you will get laughed at, literally laughed at for using these. But just be aware, depending on who you talk to, they may think this is critically important. So we're going to give you an overview of it. So let's start off with the question you're asking yourself. No, not that one, this one. What is case? Okay, so believe it or not, we do have this in English, although there's very little of it in English. Here is an example. Here we have two sentences. I saw him, he saw me. Now, as you can clearly see, he and him are two different words. All right, if you're learning English, those are two different flashcards you have to make. I and me are two different words. But you know that these both refer to the same person, just like you know these refer to the same person. In fact, when I say to you, I saw him, he saw me, you only think of two people. You don't even probably process the fact that there are four different pronouns being used. So that's what case is. Okay, why are these two words like this. I and he are subjects of the sentence, and they are in the subject case. I, he, she, we. Him and me are objects. So they're in the object case. Him, her, me, us. Interestingly, you is both the same in subject and object case. So we don't have a whole lot of these. This, by the way, is the difference between who and whom. So it's good to know how to use that correctly. Who is an object and whom is an object and who is a subject. So this is an example of case. So we do have a case system in English. It's very small, it's only a couple of words, and for the most part, we don't worry about it. But, I mean, imagine what would happen if you saw someone who was speaking like, you know, me saw he, him saw I. Right? Someone talking like that would sound ridiculous. Well, this is how you would sound if you switch cases in Arabic. So Arabic's case system is a bit more complicated. But the good thing is most of it is not used in normal speech. Most of it is used for just very formal speech. Now, if you have any complaints about the Arabic case system, you may go ahead and study Russian. Russian's got a real beauty. Okay, they have 6 different cases, as you see here. Oh, but that's not all. Those 6 different cases have all kinds of exceptions. This is one little chart. These, believe it or not, these are the pronouns. That's it. These are all the pronouns of Russian. Trust me, when I tried to study Russian, it was the case system that broke my spirit. And they use these. You are expected to write these and use these all the time. On the street, in the subway. So on our Arabic system, it's much simpler, and most of the time you don't use it. Now, you may be asking yourself, why do we bother to have a case system? Well, you may not be asking that, but if I don't tell you, then you'll be asking yourself that. Okay, so here we have, now let me just pause and say, those of you out there, as we often tell you, Arabic is what kind of language? No, not that. It's right. It's a poetic language. So this is the origins of this. Now here we have some pretty lousy poetry. I've just written 3 sentences. They're relatively dumb, and they don't really go well together. قرأ الطالب الكتاب في المكتبة. أكل الولد الكعك في البيت. درس الرجل المقالة في الحديقة. Now, if I put in the case endings for these, notice what I have here. قرأ الطالب الكتاب في المكتبة. أكل الولد الموز في البيت. درس الرجل المقالة في الحديقة. What is happening? All these words rhyme. All these words rhyme, and all these words rhyme. And I haven't done anything. Any subject, object, and indirect object they're going to have the exact same effect. So we're making poetry without doing anything. So understand, this is sort of the basics of where this system comes from. As we said, unlike many other languages, in fact, most languages use case systems. We don't use these in normal speech. I'm going to point out to you when you actually use, the few times you use them. It would be great if they were never used and we could ignore them. However, there are still a few leftover situations where they are still seen. So, you're saying enough with the introduction. Let's get to the basics. Okay, we're going to lay this out as simple as we can. Here we go. Now is where you want to really start paying attention. There are 3 cases in Arabic. That's it. I kid you not. There are only 3. They are these: subject, direct object, and after a preposition. So a word can be the subject of a sentence, it can be a direct object, or it can come after a preposition, which means it's either a direct object or it's some kind of adverbial. Now notice, these are all nouns. This system only applies to nouns and adjectives. It does not apply to verbs. Now, just in case you wanted to know, the names for these cases in Arabic are the marfu', the mansub, and the majroor. Now, we are not going to test you on this part. We will not test you on the Arabic names for these cases. But you may hear them in your future studies. Just be aware that's where they are. Okay? As you know, there are also 3 vowels in Arabic. Right? Now look, isn't this perfect? 3 cases. Okay, this is going to work out perfect. 1 vowel for each of these. So what we want you to do is associate the following vowels with the following cases. Associate the subject with the long vowel U. Associate the direct object with the vowel A or aleph. And associate the preposition with the vowel E. Now, by that we mean in all their forms. So, the same, we know we have 3 short vowels, which correspond to the 3 long vowels. So the same thing. Associate subject with the short vowel U or dhamma. Associate direct object with the short vowel E or fatha. Associate anything after a preposition with the short vowel I or kesra. And also the tanween forms. Remember the tanween? You learned those back in Aleph Ba. That's un, an, and in. Whatever it is, just associate it with these, and you have right here, this is the basics of the case system. Unfortunately, it's got as many exceptions as the IRS tax code, but this is the basics. And just in case you want to know, these are the English names for these cases as well. The nominative, accusative, and genitive. These English names tell you absolutely nothing. So I like my names much better up here. But again, you will see these in grammar books, and just be aware. We're not going to test you on these names, the marfu, mansub. We're not going to test you on nominative, accusative, genitive. We just want to know that you know the right vowel to put in the right place. Okay, that is the basics. 3 cases, 3 vowels. There's just 2 other things you have to remember. Number 1, definite nouns will take short vowels, meaning the u, e, I. Okay? No, not what you're thinking. Indefinite nouns will take the tanween form, the un, an, in. Notice we haven't brought the long vowels into this yet. Okay, so I know you're just dying to see this in action, or just dying in general. Okay. Yeah, those are the 2 rules. So let's take an example. Here we have an example. Qara'a at-talib al-kitab fil maktaba. What a good talib. Reading a book in the library. Okay, so let's go step by step through this. Qara'a is a verb. It's already got a vowel at the end of it, so we don't need to worry about it. Okay. At-talib. See this? You think you get rid of all these. They pop up. See, this is it. You're getting raw, unfiltered action here. Okay, at-talib. Well, what is at-talib in this section, in this sentence? It's the subject. It's definite. We said, right, associate the subject with u. Definite subjects take short vowels. Okay, so you're going to have one of these. At-talibu. Qara'a at-talabu. Great, we are rocking. Let's go to the next word, al-kitab. Al-kitab is what? It is the object of his voracious reading. It is also definite, so it's going to take short vowels. Remember, what vowel do we associate with object? We associate aleph. The short vowel version of aleph is a fatha. Al-kitaba. See, someone's having a great time with this. Probably having a little too much fun. It's not that much fun. Qara'a at-talibu al-kitaba fil maktaba. Right? Wizza. Fi is what? Fi is a preposition. Fi is also a character on the TV show Burn Notice. But here, fi is a preposition. So this means whatever comes after the preposition, no matter what it's doing in the sentence, is going to be in the last case. The genitive, right? Fi al-maktaba. Maktaba comes after a preposition. We've only got 1 vowel left. We already used the other 2. It is definite, so it takes a short vowel, I. Right? قرأ الطالب الكتاب في المكتبة. Okay, so this would be the classical reading. If this were poetry, and this is some pretty lousy poetry, if this were poetry, you would read these endings in it. Now, as I said, if you try and talk like this to anyone on the street, you will get laughed at. قرأ الطالب الكتاب في المكتبة. People will laugh at you. This is like trying to talk like Shakespeare in downtown Louisville or something. Okay? So, don't do that, but understand these are the case endings where they come from. Okay? Jay, let's do another one. That's fun. Alright. شاهد رجل فيلم في مع صديق. Okay? So, a gentleman watched a film with a friend. Now, this is a very unusual sentence. You would have all this indefiniteness, but you get the idea. Let's look at this word, rajul. Rajul is the what of this sentence? He's the subject. He is indefinite subject. And remember we said associate subject with u, but indefinite takes the tanween form. Now I know that that's the way the computer does it, but this is the the double dhamma, pronounced as un. Shahada rajulan film ma sadiq. I would just point out to you, this is just an interesting side note. Well, it's a useful side note. This is also known as the dictionary form of a noun. So, like when Arabs write a generic word, they put this case ending on it because I guess they figure subject is like the most basic one. And so, if you ever get confused, if you ask someone who has gone through a very strict Arabic curriculum, you know, someone who's been brought up old school, and you ask them like what a word is, like what is the word for door, they would probably say babun. It's confused the heck out of me, right? Because man, I've heard the word door was bab and house was bait, and then someone tells me it's babun, baitun, kelbun, sayaratun. I'm thinking these are different words. This is like the dictionary form is to present it this way. We don't do that here in America because it's confusing as heck, because the word is not rajulun, it just happens to be rajulun in this case. If the rajulun was being watched, he'd be rajulan. Okay, so just understand, if you hear people putting that, you know, if you ask them, hey, how do I say this word? And they tell you, well, it's banayatun. Ignore the because it's only on there because they're being like really classy. Okay, enough of that. The next word, film. Now this is the part where you will want to pay attention. Remember our goals at the beginning. We're going to come up to one of the instances where case endings are actually used in normal everyday Arabic. Here we go. Can't wait. Yeah. Film is what? It's the object, it's the thing being watched. Now, it's what? It's indefinite, it's a film. Watch what happens. Ah-ha-ha. Well, you knew it was going to be an aleph sound, an ah. You knew it was going to be a tanween, but notice this thing takes an aleph. This tanween has to sit on top of an aleph. The aleph it has no value itself. It's just there's a placeholder. It goes back to the early days of writing. It's why they did that. Okay. This is pronounced shahada rajulun filman masadik for now. Notice the filman. Remember what our goals were way back at the beginning? Correctly use this ending. Alright, well, we've finally gotten to an ending that is actually used in normal writing. This one, because it has a long vowel, even though that aleph is not pronounced, it's written. This will be written in. In books, in normal writing, it will have this. So this is one of the first ones you'll see. We told you much earlier on, you know, anytime there's an indefinite object, this goes on the end of it. Well, now you know why. Okay? Doesn't help you much, but that's what they do. Alright, let's go to the last word. Ma Sadiq. He's with a friend. He has many friends. It's obviously after a preposition. Okay, and so it's indefinite, so we're going to use a tanween. Right? Sadiqin. Shahida rajulun filman ma sadiqin. Okay, that's what we get. Notice got three vowels, three cases. This is the order they go in. Last point I will make here. This case trumps all the others. If there were ever a reason why there were more than one involved, this one trumps all the others. Actually, that was a bad word. This one beats all the others. I didn't even think of that. Bad me. Okay. So this one takes precedence. So anytime, anything after a preposition, you automatically know what it is. Okay. We could say more. Hona. Now the question would be, what would this actually look like if this were written in, say, a book or a newspaper? If this were written in a if this were written in a newspaper, it would look like this. Notice the case endings are not going to be written in anything other than the Quran or poetry. But that aleph stays because it's an indefinite object. And if you were to read this, you could dump the other case endings, but you would actually read this like Shahada rajulan filman ma sadiq. This one you would actually see. So we have told you one instance where a case ending is actually used in everyday real life, and that's it. Okay? I know what you're thinking. Time for a little practice. Keep that iron gut we've got here. All right. Here we have a sentence.